like a tweet hurricane than a tweet storm, covering a range of hot-button topics. The president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, went on the Sunday talk shows, wow, with a performance filled with dodges, admissions, confused answers, and a disjointed defense of the president in the independent counsel investigation. And the Washington Post points out that almost every entity the president has ever run is now under some form of investigation. Every single one.
That's the definition of the walls closing in.
Bad day.
Yeah.
We have a few new NBC News national polls with some dangerous indications for the president. His re-elect ratings sunk into the 30s. And unless a sudden compromise is reached, large portions of the federal government will shut down on Friday. So what do all those stories have in common? Like so much of the country's public dialogue these days, they all revolve around Donald J. Trump. And the most distressing fact of all, for those like us who have known him a long time, that is exactly how he likes it, Joe. We know that.
Yeah, but it's not how he should like it.
Doesn't matter.
Think by now. The evidence is all out there that disruption for the sake of disruption, chaos for the sake of chaos, tossing around insults for the sake of tossing around insults. This strategy, it's what I've always called the strategy for the 33%. It doesn't work. You can look at polls over the past several weeks. You can see people, only 28, 29% of Americans support the way Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani, but really Donald Trump, have handled the Mueller investigation. That's about as bad as it gets. Yeah. You can look at the polls from this weekend, and what do you find? He's got re-elects in the 30s. And it used to be that if you were a politician and only less than 50% of the people that were in your district or in your state or in the country wanted to re-elect you, being in the 40s was seen as something that made you vulnerable. Being in the 30s, well, that's just untenable for the president. It doesn't get any worse than that for somebody that wants to be re-elected. And you add to all of that, of course, the real poll that took place over the past month or two, and that is what happened on Election Day when Americans went out and voted in almost record numbers in midterms. Republicans lost the popular vote by more than any party has ever lost the popular vote in midterms. They lost 40 seats. They had the worst performance since Watergate. I mean, Mr. President, listen to all of this. This is not working. This disruption every day, the chaos, the tweets, not working. Well, and the question is, Mika, whether there is anybody who can reach the president. I suspect it won't be the new chief of staff because, of course, when you have somebody that has called you a terrible human being in public, that's a difficult person to trust.
You can only hope. With us, we have political writer for the New York Times and MSNBC political analyst Nick Confessori, professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude Jr., associate editor of Commentary Magazine and an MSNBC contributor, Noah Rothman, and Washington anchor for BBC World News America, Katty Kay. So let's get into the news and start with one of these lead stories. During a rainy weekend in Washington, President Trump went on a Twitter tirade with attacks on law enforcement that even many supporters could not defend. Among them, quote, "Remember Michael Cohen only became a rat after the FBI did something which was absolutely unthinkable and unheard of until the witch hunt was illegally started? They broke into an attorney's office. Why didn't they break into the DNC to get the server or Crooked's office?" Where do we begin? The National Review's Andrew McCarthy, a former SDNY prosecutor and frequent critic of the Mueller investigation, responded, "Sir, in mobster lingo, a rat is a witness who tells prosecutors real incriminating information. Searches of lawyers' offices, common enough that DOJ has a procedure for them. Here it yielded evidence of crimes you said he should be jailed for. You should stop."
Let's stop right there for a second. Noah Rothman, it's significant that Andy McCarthy, who has sort of carved a place for himself at National Review, but also on Fox News, as a frequent critic of the Mueller investigations, is now coming out and becoming more and more critical of the president, it seems, by the day, suggesting that what's happening actually is not a conspiracy, and especially telling the president this weekend he should just stop.
No, he's certainly right. Andy's correct on 2 points. One is sort of philosophical, and that is that the president, the head of the executive branch, the executor of America's laws, should not be calling people who work with the government, who work with prosecutors, rats, potentially in tainting future prosecutions by communicating to other potential cooperators that the head of the executive branch doesn't look kindly on this sort of thing, and that they might get a better deal if they were to decline to work with prosecutors. That's really dangerous, and it's certainly unprofessional and unbecoming of the executive branch. Secondarily, Andy's talking about the Southern District of New York, which isn't the Mueller probe, which isn't something that the president can just wave away. This is a state-level prosecution. Andy knows these guys. He thinks they're very professional, and I think he's right. The charges that were brought against Mr. Cohen and the charges that are being investigated that are linked to the president are very serious, and that's the kind of thing that he can't just make go away with an executive order. And so the president is behaving like he's in real trouble, and I think he's right.
Well, Eddie Glaude, he also is behaving, as Andy pointed out, like a mobster. Yeah. He said, this is what mob bosses say. And by the way, when you use the word rat, that is somebody who is telling the truth to the feds. One other side comment here. We had a Republican president suggest, without irony, that somebody should break into DNC headquarters. Yeah, we'll just let that hang out there.
So much hanging out
there.
The
president is unhinged.
Yeah, it seems like he's in a to echo Noah, he's in a full-blown panic here. The walls are closing in. One of the interesting things about this is that Trump has consistently undermined basic Republican principles, and one of those has been a kind of defense of the rule of law. He's just flouting this at every turn in light of his own self-interest here. So the idea of Donald Trump invoking language of a mobster, rat, only confirms in the kind of common sense understanding that he has mobster-like qualities. And so I think all of this is an indication, Joe, that he is in full-blown panic mode. The Twitter tsunami this weekend suggested that he knows something else is coming down the pike. He knows that an anvil is about to drop, not a shoe, an anvil. And so we're seeing him in some ways come unhinged.
And Mika, we saw this a few weeks ago before the other shoe dropped in the Cohen case. We saw him go on tirades, and we're saying, well, Mueller or the Southern District of New York must be preparing something else. I think here, though, with every organization he's ever run, as the Washington Post said, seemingly under investigation now, this is a president who really does feel the walls closing in on him very quickly.
It's hard not to worry about the impact of whatever deflection is coming. Trump continued the complaints, this time against his former attorney general, writing, Jeff Sessions should be ashamed of himself for allowing this total hoax to get started in the first place. Later writing, they are entrapping people for misstatements, lies, or unregulated things that took place many years ago. Our president also complained about what he was seeing on television. Quote, a real scandal is the one-sided coverage, hour by hour, of networks like NBC and Democrat spin machines like Saturday Night Live. It is all nothing less than unfair news coverage, and Dem commercials should be tested in courts. Can't be legal? Only defame and belittle? Collusion?
Katty Kay, this once again proves our point. This is a president who not only has no interest in understanding NATO, no interest in understanding foreign policy, no interest, as unfortunately James Mattis found out after giving him a briefing of U.S. history across the world post-1945. He also has no interest in really understanding the First through the 10th Amendments or the Constitution of the United States. He's suggesting here that a comedy show have an injunction slapped against it because it is critical of a politician. Any first-year law student would tell you in America that the most protected speech in America is political speech,